If your baby's getting so big and they're growing out of every single item they own and you're wondering what to do with used baby clothes, stick around. I have some suggestions of how to figure this out. Hello, I'm Cassie from Custom Built Parenthood, and the big question for today is, should you save clothes for a future baby? This can be a little tricky to figure out, and honestly, I can make arguments for both sides. So I've come up with 5 questions to help walk you through this decision to figure out what's best for your family and your situation. If you do stick around till the end of the video, I do have a tip for you of how to shop from this point moving forward for your child if you're wanting to save clothes and hang on to those for future use. So in a nutshell, my journey about saving clothes or not saving clothes started 10 years ago when I started fostering, and then a couple years after that I had my own child. It was a girl, and I saved everything. As she grew out of things, I put them in a bin. It was very organized. I would label it and I would put it in our attic, and bin after bin after bin just piled up, right? They grow so quickly, and I just had bins and bins of different size clothes just piling up, and at some point I realized it was craziness. I just honestly got rid of it all. At one point it was really weighing me down, and I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna let it all go. Part of it was because I had been kind of on a journey of minimalism and just realizing these aren't making me happy. This is kind of just cluttering everything up. And then also I realized there were actually babies out there right then that could actually use them instead of just sitting unused, untouched in these bins. So I got rid of everything, never looked back, and now fast forward several years. I have 3 children, so a 7-year-old girl, 5-year-old boy, and a 1-year-old boy. And I've gotten into a pretty good system or rhythm about what I do with all of their used clothes. So I will walk you through kind of what I do, and mainly I'm just gonna walk you through 5 questions to ask yourself of how to really figure this out for yourself. So the first question is, do you have the storage space? If storage space for old baby clothes is limited, the answer is gonna be an easy no. If you don't have the space, you're not gonna store them. If you do have the space though, I want you to avoid the trap of just thinking, well, I have the space, so I'm just gonna save everything. I would highly recommend you be a little more intentional if you do have the storage space. Another thing I do want to mention, in my personal experience, I have found sometimes those clothing items don't hold up very well in storage. After they're just sitting year after year, and especially if they're in kind of the heat or the cold, they can kind of stretch out, they can yellow. Not every item does this, it probably depends on the quality, but there is a chance that those clothes really won't be worth using after they've been stored for so long. So that's something to just keep in mind. The other thing is, at what point are you gonna stop saving those clothes? Is it when your baby turns 2 or 5 or 10? Just know they're always going to be getting new clothes, and if you're saving everything, eventually that will max out your storage space. So it might be worth thinking about just long term, what's the plan? Are you just saving these, first 12 months of baby clothes when they're growing so much? Or at whatever point you're going to cap it off so you don't find yourself years down the road with this mountain of clothes. This is the first question on our list because really it's a really quick, easy no if you don't have the space. If you do have the space, continue on to these next steps to continue to figure out if it's right to save those clothes. The next question is, do you have another child that will be able to use these items? Saving clothes for another child is something that I would absolutely recommend, first of all, but we're not talking about a hypothetical future child. We're talking about an actual child. So if you actually have a second child that will be able to use these clothes in the future, I hands down would say yes, save those clothes. I wouldn't just save everything. Again, I'll kind of walk you through what I do, but for Miss 7, she's my only girl at this point, and she's old enough that everything at this point really isn't gender neutral. So because I have 2 other boys and no existing daughter, I am right away getting rid of all of her stuff. So we'll give them to cousins or we'll donate to the thrift store. There's just no reason to hang on to those. Even if I were to have a daughter at some point, that's a really long time for them to just sit being unused for years and years and years and years because of that age gap that there would be. It's just not worth it. For Mr. 5, because I do have another son younger than him, all of his clothes that he grows out of, goes through a sorting process where I put them into 3 piles. So there's a trash pile, anything that has holes or stains or is stretched out. The second pile is a donate pile. This is for anything that I just don't love. It's in pretty good shape, but I didn't love seeing him in it, or I didn't love dressing him in it if he was younger. And so why would I think that I want to save this for my other son? The third pile is basically a too big bin, I call it, for my third son. So any items that are in great shape, that I loved seeing him in, that I loved him wearing, absolutely I'm gonna save those for him to use in the future. So that's what I would recommend doing if you do have an existing child. Still sort through those items and make sure it is really things that you want to hang on to and reuse. Our third question is, do you plan to have more children? The main reason most people choose to hang on to old baby clothes is to use for a hypothetical future baby. If these plans to have more children are in the distant future, probably don't worry about it. But if it's in the close future, like you plan on doing that pretty soon, it's definitely worth really thinking through what you would like them to wear. As opposed to just boxing everything up, again, really think through what you might use. With more kids in the foreseeable future, I think it's definitely worth being intentional and realizing, okay, what did I actually use, first of all, and what did I actually enjoy using? So it's similar to the sorting we went through in the previous question, but even more so, you might want to nix anything that's not gender neutral. Totally a personal preference, but I've just found the chances are actually pretty slim that you have the same gender at the same time of year. Those babies, that are super duper little, it matters what the season is. Short sleeves and long sleeves, they're getting new wardrobes like every 3 months, right? 0, 3 months, 6 months, and they really do need to match up with the seasons. So you might decide to just let go of anything that's at least not gender neutral, because it's just not a super high chance that you're going to use them again. The fourth question is money incredibly tight? When it comes to used baby clothes, you might be wondering what to do if money is tight. I've been in this boat enough times to know that money problems, money stress can really trick you into thinking that you should hang on to every single thing just in case, because you might need it down the road. This definitely can come in handy, but it can also really clutter up your life and your space. So I have a few points that I want to make to try to dissuade you from doing this just out of default, that you don't want to have to buy it again in the future. I talked a lot about baby essentials. I'll link that up here and in the description. But the amount of clothing, especially that your new baby needs, is very minimal. And you kind of need to realize that it won't cost that much money to replace and get them a whole new wardrobe. 2 ways to do this. There's thrifting for cheap and hand-me-downs for free. So first of all, thrifting. I do this for all of my kids' clothes, even to this day. Even for my 7-year-old, I buy them used, and it really saves a ton of money. My local thrift store probably has onesies for about $1, I think, and you figure they need even a dozen onesies, that would be $12. So think to yourself, is it really worth storing a ton of bins and a ton of stuff for something that you could replace for really low cost? And if money is just that tight, you can't even think about doing that, think about hand-me-downs. Think of friends or family who have babies or toddlers that are just a little bit older than what you have, and just ask them even if you could borrow them. I've done that before. I've loaned stuff and also received stuff just to borrow for those few months, that little window that they actually fit into them, to just share it around, right? I mean, we all have kids, and they use it for such a small amount of time, it probably won't be missed to just use it for those few months. So you can think about doing that. Last little tip is, if you have people that give your child or baby gifts, let them know they could really use some clothes. Tell them what they need, and maybe suggest that they do that instead of a little toy or something, and that can also add to their wardrobe as well. So the last question I think is worth considering is, do you know someone who could use the clothes right now? Donating used baby clothes has become the biggest motivator for me to let go of all of the used clothes that my kids have. I genuinely hate the thought of them just sitting unused when there's people out there who could really use them. My favorite is giving them to family or friends who need them, but I also enjoy just donating to my local thrift store. As I said, I have been the recipient of many of those thrift store finds or hand-me-downs, and it is such a blessing, and I love the idea of being the giver instead of the receiver for some of these instances. So think about that. Realize that there's people out there who can really use these items, and if you do have a use for them, of course, save them for yourself, but if not, it might be worth just letting them go and just knowing you're doing a good deed. You're letting somebody else actually use them, and like I said, you could even ask for them back if it's somebody you know, and then you can have them for that hypothetical situation. So now I wanted to give you a little tip of how to shop if you want to save clothes for future babies. So if you're wanting to recycle items through multiple children, the key is buying clothes that will last and having those items be good quality and gender neutral. Those would be my main things, and this is what I do, especially for those really early years of baby clothes, and then as they get older, all of the gear and kind of big ticket items. So Miss 7, every year I buy her black snow pants and gender neutral boots, and that way they can match any coat, any hat and mittens, but then I can reuse those pants and boots for my boys. And those items are usually pretty expensive, and if you buy them good quality and buy them gender neutral colors, it really does pay off, and you can save those and use them in the future. I also did that with onesies. I just bought white onesies, and they can be mix and match with cute pants or little headbands for girls, or just pants and what am I trying to say, bibs for boys or whatever, but they go with everything, and then that's one thing you don't have to buy. My last little tip would be to capsule wardrobe your child's clothing. That just means that every bottom looks good with every top, and I have found this really pays off to just decide up front, I buy tan pants for my boys, and that way as I'm shopping for tops at any point, I just know they're gonna have tan bottoms. So figure out what tops will look good. A lot of times they'll grow into their next size of tops when they're not quite ready to, grow out of their bottoms. And that way it just always works. However their wardrobe is kind of shaping up to be, it will always work with that set color of bottoms. If dressing your kid is a big deal to you and you don't want to just limit yourself, of course, buy them any colors that you want. I've just found for me it's nice to have it simplified. It makes it so that they can dress themselves. It pays off in many different ways. So this is what I think you should do with used baby clothes. Like I said, I do think there's reasons to save and reasons not to save. Hopefully this has kind of pointed out some new things that maybe you didn't think about before, and just do whatever is best for you and figure out what works. So if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would love for you to subscribe to my channel if you are enjoying hanging out with me, and we'll see you next time.